First of all, we'll start out where you can introduce our new board member. Of course, she's been here before, but...
Amy Davis has been appointed by the mayor and the common council to serve, I believe it's going to be a 3-year term, Trish? Not even sure, we'll have to go back and check, but term for life, maybe. But Amy, as you recall, was a Leadership Oshkosh adjunct member, I think 2 years ago now. So she had filled out an application and indicated that she'd be interested in serving on the board, and she was recently appointed. So maybe, Amy, if you want to give a little background on what you do and how you are involved with the parks potentially.
I grew up in this community.
Yep. It's on.
It's on now. All right.
It was on before.
No, it is. Now it's good.
I grew up in Oshkosh. I have 3 children who play softball and are active at parks. I work at J Manufacturing and interested in the parks are such an important part of our community in bringing people in.
Welcome. Thank you. All right, now a roll call.
Davis,
Here.
Aaron's, Bogoleski, Herman,
Here.
Michelson,
Here.
Miller, Rule,
Here.
Schuessler,
Here.
Wooler.
Here. Okay, approval of the June 15 minutes. Any additions, corrections? I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Should we start with, discuss it, accept Parkland dedication?
Yep.
For Bristol Square subdivision.
Okay. What I wanted to do is just give the board members, because a number of you, including me since I've been here, we haven't had a subdivision come forward that was looking to dedicate parkland, so it's been a while since we had this come forward. So I just wanted to give everybody a little background on what's before us and how it gets to this point. Essentially, when there's a new subdivision that's proposed within the city limits, the developer, per city code and the subdivision regulations in the city code, is required to dedicate either parkland if it's indicated in our comprehensive plan throughout the city, as well as our comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, that the area is in need of a neighborhood park. So that's one of the reasons why we obviously want to have an updated comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. If the board approves the parkland dedication, the developer then moves forward to the Plan Commission, continuing on with the development, and we eventually take over the parkland when the final CSM is recorded with the county and it is actually deeded over to the city. The other option for the developer, if the city would choose that, is to have a fee in lieu of land dedication. When that might come into play is if there's a development that's going on where we don't want to accept the parkland as being offered, or the area, the neighborhood is already serviced by a neighborhood park. In this case, and I sent you a map showing our acquisition map that's in our comprehensive outdoor recreation plan. If you take a look at the document that I did provide, hopefully you're able to see it. It's pretty small to read, but I'll give you some landmark areas where this property is located that is before us this evening. Easier to see up there. Actually, if you take a look up towards the top, there's 65, number 65 in the yellow is the county park facilities on the north side, and you see that there's a smaller blue circle just to the left of the one parcel 65. This subdivision that's being proposed is right essentially in the middle of that circle, which in our park plan indicates a need for a neighborhood park in that area. And when we stated a neighborhood park, it was anywhere from 3 to 10 acres. Going back to the subdivision code and ordinance, the developer is, the amount of parkland is determined by the number of residential units or family housing units within the development. And just to let you know what it states in the code, the amount of land to be provided shall be determined on the basis of 1,100 square feet per detached single-family housing unit and 900 square feet per attached multifamily housing unit. So what the city plan staff and the plan commission will look at is, in the preliminary plat, the developer gives us an idea how many households or how many family units will be planned for the development. In this case, when you took a look through the information I provided you from the Plan Commission, the planning staff did the calculation for us, and essentially it came out to be roughly about 3 acres based on the preliminary plat that the developer has proposed. In actuality, what he's looking to do is dedicate, I think it's 3.2 acres of usable parkland. So we would not accept wetlands as part of this. We want to make sure it's usable space. So it's 3.2 acres that he is proposing to dedicate to the city. If we decided that the fee in lieu of parkland dedication is what our preference would be, it's approximately $50,000 that the developer would be required to pay to the city. That money that's paid to the city then is set up in a separate account that's specifically for future parkland acquisition or capital improvement in the park. And what it would be used for is down the road if we had some further development come in and wanted to purchase some additional parkland, that we would tap into that fund. So hopefully that gives you kind of an idea on how we get to this point. And again, it's the first one in about 5.5 years since I've been here that a development has come through, so it's new for many of the park board members. City planning staff as well as our staff are recommending that we accept the dedicated parkland because again, it fits right into our plan in one of the neighborhoods that we are recommending for a neighborhood park. I don't know if there's any questions that I can answer based on the information, or if you've got any questions on the process.
Yes, Jim.
Yeah, I just have just a couple questions. Do we know when these roads are going to be put in? Is it Bristol Drive? It was hard to read this map here, but that kind of the main road that looks like it's going to come near this property, do we know when that would be put in?
Yep, I don't know if they stated it in there.
Probably in the developers agreement. We got that tomorrow night on our agenda.
Yeah, it would be required to be put in because we need access to the parkland, plus if they're building on that end, the fire department and emergency services need access, so it would be one of the first things that would be going through.
Okay, and then it said in there something about a temporary cul-de-sac? Mm-hmm. And that's because what, that road isn't going to go all the way through it first or something? Is that
Correct. There's a Town of Oshkosh subdivision on the north side of Norton Avenue. Actually, if you take a look at the map that I provided in your packet, you'll see it's called Western Drive. That dead ends, basically.
Yep.
The intent is that road will go straight through at one point or another once, I believe these homes from the Town of Oshkosh would be annexed into the city. So right now, there'd be a temporary cul-de-sac.
Just to get to the park?
Just to get to the park, and then sometime in the future, then that would, Western Drive would be extended into the subdivision and past the park area.
Do they think, I mean, I'm just looking at the information, so in other words, they think somehow they're going to be able to go into that wetland and continue that road eventually? Looks like wetland cuts across where that...
They're actually avoiding the wetland. Another page shows the wetland delineation. If you take a look, Jimmy, I think you got it, the one that I'm looking at, the highlighted one.
Yep.
They might cut through a portion, or they may have to redesign it around the small wetland.
Yeah.
But essentially, they're putting the roadway close to the wetland, but then adjacent to the city park property that they'd be dedicating.
Okay, and the main thing is there's a cul-de-sac, at least at first to get there, that's the main...
Correct.
That's the main thing, okay.
Yes.
If there's been any study of what it's going to cost the city if we accept this land to develop it into a park?
It'll all depend on what kind of amenities we put in there. In our comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, when we had Rettler provide that information, they do give us some general idea what a neighborhood park is going to cost for development if we were to put in, let's say if we're going to put in a basketball court or a youth baseball field, they'll give us a general dollar amount, but until we get into the design of what the neighborhood is looking for, what we would probably do is wait until some of the neighbors are moved into this area, some of the city property owners, and then have a neighborhood meeting asking what they would like to see in the parkland, just like we do with some of the other park facilities for playground installations and so forth. But being 3 acres, it's not going to be, a large development going on in the park. Most likely in a neighborhood park, we're looking at some play equipment, potentially some restroom facility possibly, but it's all depending on what the neighbors would like to see. So as far as the dollar amount, it's going to depend on what the amenities are that we'd be looking to put in there.
The city would be footing the cost for that.
That's correct.
I have a question. So So in the grand scheme of all the things that we have going on with park projects, where do you anticipate this falling in then? Like what year do you think we'd be developing this?
I think it'll depend on how quickly the homes and the neighborhood develops. Because once they move in, they'll want to see some type of activities going on. We have had contact with some of the neighbors up off of Western Drive, some of the city residents that have said they would like to see a neighborhood park. So to give you an idea, I guess it will depend more on when it's developed. Right now, we don't have anything in the 5-year capital improvement plan, so maybe something within the next 5 years once we get into the CIP.
Any other questions? All right. Entertain a motion to approve this?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Roll call?
Davis. Gurens.
Aye.
Herman.
Aye.
Michelson.
Aye.
Rule.
Aye.
Schussler.
Aye.
Wooler.
Aye. Okay. Next is update on Menominee Park Shoreline Restoration Project.
Last meeting, you can recall, the board had some discussion about the shoreline plantings on the north side of Miller's Bay, and had some questions and voiced some concerns about the height and so forth, and at that time, we did let you know that Mr. Mitchell and his group of volunteers will be doing some of the cleanup in that area in June, and I believe that has taken place already, and the board members had asked if we could get Justin in here for an update, so we did invite Justin, and he is here this evening. We did give you a hard copy of the full update that Justin has prepared. He does have a brief slide presentation that he'll be sharing, and then I also did provide a copy of a letter from Bill Miller, Vice Chair of the Park Advisory Board. Bill could not be here tonight. He's at a community fundraiser, but he asked that Terry Wohler please read into the minutes a note from him as well. So what I'm going to do is, Justin, I think we've got your PowerPoint up there ready to go.
Great. And I asked today, Melanie Leet is a conservation technician with Winnebago County Land and Water Conservation Department, and she has, her and her colleague Chad have recently gone out and done kind of an assessment of the plot just to provide a professional opinion on the health of it, the status of it, as well as to give an additional perspective or an idea of additional methods that we could further reduce the height. So at the end, she's going to give a really quick review on that, as well as if there are any technical questions. It's really nice to have professional staff on our. So really quick, this is going to be just 11 slides, and you've already seen now 2 of them. So we're going to review some things, 25-15 work dates and future plans. This doesn't go into all of the how it came about, the benefits, the controversy, that side of it. That is available in other stuff. You guys, as recall, turned down the 5-year plan that was put forward. And as a result, out of that meeting last year, this motion was put forward that our committee work with city staff on a 3-year period to maintain essentially the growth of the existing plot, looking to reduce the height. That's the specific language that came from the meeting that was passed 9-0. Board Member Miller also requested a formal agreement. We had further conversation over the next several months with Ray and Bill. We signed the typical agreement for managing a plot with language provided by Ray, and identified some target goals for 2015 consistent with the Parks Advisory Board recommendations. And that included, we transplanted a majority of the cut plants, as you'll see in the report. We transplanted about 160 of them. Many of them went to the new plot. We donated a handful to the Garden Club of Oshkosh, Sheldon Nature Center, growing Oshkosh. That was quite a task. That included digging up 160 pretty sizable plants, transporting them over to the other bed, or off-site, filling all of those holes with new soil, and then we replaced most of that with, like you saw here, the pen stem, and that's an example of when we put 25 of those plants. They grow about 2 feet in height. So the cut plant was one of the worst of, in several of the parks members' minds, the worst instigators of height issues, growing as high as 10 feet. And as you recall, that wasn't a desirable plant that we had initially planned to have there. It's a native, it has environmental benefits, but not something that we were planning on having there. So we got rid of most of those. So all of the ones that had basically been either a second year or third year plant were removed. Now, after we went in, some of them, maybe they're knee-high, waist-high now, will be going back in next spring and removing the remaining cut plants. We also completed the installation of the new bed by the pump station. We installed a significant amount of new mulch for the trails at the existing bed, and then we've completed several monthly cleanup dates. So those are the targets that the city and the group had identified for 2015. Cut plants, as you can see, some pretty good work. That's a lot of plants that we put in that were transplanted to the new bed, as well as, much to the dismay of my wife, a lot of them ended up coming home to my house and getting potted for future donation to Sheldon Nature. And volunteers from the committee went out in partnership with them and planted a bunch of them out there. And yeah. And then the new pump station, we worked with Neil DeBoll. He is out of Prairie Nursery and is one of the foremost experts on prairie plants in Wisconsin. So he gave us some recommendations based on the soil type and location. We partnered this last semester with a UW Oshkosh class. We had the class for the whole semester. They did some community education. They did some of the project layout planning. They helped with obtaining the plants. They helped with the plant sale that we had to help raise funds. All of that's detailed in your report. They also partnered with Webster Stanley. They did a day of shoreland planting / education on how plants can help clean water. So it was great to have some valuable collaboration with what we're doing with the parks, with UW Oshkosh and with Webster Stanley Elementary School. That project is a little bit more detailed in your report, as well as the goals for further expansion with the partnership with Webster, which again, that was one of the valuable ideas that made that new plot by the pump station valuable, and that it's right by Webster Stanley. Not necessarily a directive, but several Parks Board members had indicated that they weren't big fans of natural plantings, the way they appear. The word was messy. And so we tried, a new idea is to kind of blend the natural planting concept with typically when you're spreading seed, you're just spreading seed throughout the whole thing, right? So this is the plot map that we followed to try and give a little bit more organization while having plants that are coming to maturity throughout the season. Now this will take, like the existing bed, more than a year, so you won't see this year. But in the future years, as things start to come to maturity, you should see the more of an organized. It's still going to be natural planting. It's not going to be like your front yard terrace garden, but a little bit more organized than the existing bed. Some of the site maintenance that we've worked on, we'd gone back a ways off of the plot and did some looking from basically the road across the street and identified a handful of plants that are still pretty tall, as well as what was clear, the most significant blocking of view was the trees. They needed to be cleaned up. So we did some work cleaning up the base of the trees, and Bill, we've been in touch with Bill. Bill's done some additional trimming of the trees to help clean them up. Also, obviously, picking up garbage. We trimmed the majority of the rosin weed. There was a couple strands that were left just to let some go to seed. And then when we do the work on the site, particularly along the trail, we try to remove the nettle. It's a native plant, it's a host plant for some native species. So we do leave it when it's right along the water, but we want to make sure that it's not in reaching distance for anybody utilizing that space. Obviously, the thistle and then some of the grasses are not desirable. The rosin weed is detailed more in your packet as well. That goes in hand with what we would identify as our goals for next year to continue kind of addressing some of the taller species. Rosinweed is still pretty prevalent in the plot, as well as a coneflower plant that this is really the first year that it's come out. It's a pretty tall yellow flowering cone flower that we will be looking to remove next spring. And I estimate that there's about 40 of those plants combined. At one point, we had a trail going through the middle of the plot, but as plants start to grow and mature, they obviously, as you can tell, it fills in pretty quickly. So next year, we want to rework that a little bit and make it wider so that it's more visible and readily available for use. Weed the new bed. So if you walk by the new bed, similar to if you walk by the nice new work that they did at the George Washington statue, you tend to have some weeds that grow. They're just present in the park, right? And according to Neil DeBow, don't pull those the first year because you have new seedlings that are trying to take root, and when you pull those, you disturb them. So you want to make sure you get them cut back before they go to seed. So you will see some, right now they're pretty low, but you will see some weeds at some point in the fall. We'll look to trim those back, and then the following year we'll get those all pulled. But that'll be a target for next year. And, obviously every year to continue to meet and communicate with city staff regarding any additional needs or concerns. So if I can just turn it over to Melanie really quick. She has, I think, a 2-page summary of her observations that she had from their visit in early July. And then if you do have any questions on anything technical, now is a great time because this is what she does. So,
like Justin said, my name is Melanie Leet, and I work with Winnebago County Land and Water Conservation Department.
Address?
For the 625 East County Road Y. It's a shared department between UW Extension, Parks Department. DNR is also in our building, as well as NRCS and the Farm Service Agency out there. Our department works primarily at protecting and preserving water quality. A large majority of our jobs are done out working with farmers, working in agricultural areas, trying to keep runoff from entering our lakes and systems. Through the years, back when the dams were put in the mid-1800s, raised the water level. A lot of our lake-adjacent wetlands were flooded out. Through the years, there's been a lot of development. What used to be a natural system that kind of filtered itself has now turned into rock shorelines and manicured lawns and through all sources of pollution, through ag, through urban, we have a very polluted system. So now we have to try and come back and try and repair and correct these issues, and that's what a large majority of my work does, is working through waterways, wetland restorations, shoreline protection, shoreline restoration. Did I mention manure storage? We go all over the place, and we work with a lot of different things, all the way from ag up to what happens in the city. So Justin asked us to go out and take a look. Chad and I have been working with the county for about 17 years now, so we've seen a lot through the years, but Justin wanted us to touch upon the health of the shoreline habitat restoration there and take a look and just provide some recommendations. I know there's been some concerns Through everybody working together, hopefully we can come up with things, ideas that make everybody happy and works for everybody. So we went out July 2nd, took a look at the buffer. It appears to be doing very well. The plants are very healthy, thick, full. There is a little bit on the bergamot taking over that I think could be thinned out a little bit. You want a nice, diverse planting. But overall, it seemed to be very healthy planting. I'm trying to think of what else. At that time, he had already gone through and cut back the bergamot, or the cup plants that were in there. I know that's part of the concern, are the taller species. I don't know what your overall goal was as far as cutting back the height.
2 to 3 foot.
2 to 3 foot? Well,
That's what we were promised, is what it was.
that
I thought it
was,
was 2 feet, but,
Yeah, we said
we
no.
thought it was 1 to 2 feet originally, but maybe, could be a little higher, but,
Yeah.
I've not heard nobody say anything over 3 feet.
without taking it all out and starting over again, that might be very difficult. Another option would be what we always do on ours, because we don't typically work with huge parcels like this. We work with smaller property owners. When we come across a landowner that wants to put in one of these shoreline buffers, we take their entire shoreline, allow them a 30% viewing corridor. So if it's a 100-foot shoreline, they can have 30 feet of viewing corridor. And then we pick the plants based on what they're looking for and go from there. So perhaps viewing corridors might be an option. They can be in one spot. A lot of times people like to have their little paths. They want to have a fire pit. They want to have areas where they can watch. Maybe they put the taller plants to the outside, put the narrower plants to the center. But there's definitely a lot of options that are out there. I think to cut it all down to that level would be extremely difficult. 'Cause I have done 3-foot plantings, but now that it's all established, that would take a lot of man hours and a lot of time.
Well, it's our understanding that that's what you thinned out, right? The real tall ones.
The real tall ones, yes.
So I went back, and maybe you guys did as well, some of you went back and watched the meeting from last year, and that's why I grabbed the specific agreement that was identified, but we moved, you specifically said that the height of some of those plants is getting crazy. They're 8, 9, 10 feet tall, and so specifically, those are the ones that we identified this year. So the tallest of the tallest are gone, and that was a good, I don't know, I have it in the report. I mean, over 100 probably hours of labor that went into getting rid of those. And next year, we plan to do the same, only for kind of the next tier of species. They don't get quite that tall, but they readily get 6 to 7 feet. So next year's target will be to get rid of, again, 80% of those. All of the ones that we identify are mature enough to tell what plant it is, so.
Right.
But I think the majority are like 3 to 5 in there. So I don't know if you're ever going to get down to that with that buffer, down below 2 feet. Is that your goal? Sorry.
No, you're fine. And Melanie hasn't, she hasn't been out working with us on the site. She did a visit. She's not part of our committee. I tried to bring in another a professional entity that could give more of a neutral analysis. This gentleman mentions 2 feet. I was not at any sort of initial Parks Board meeting where this had gone through. But nobody from our immediate committee of volunteers had ever committed to 2 feet. And any of the plant list that we actually knew that we were getting, very few of them were under 2 feet. As you're probably aware, a lot of the normal shore plants are in the 3 to 5 foot range. We ran into a significant issue with some of these plants that we had asked for a shorter species installation, and then you ended up having in our seed mix a lot of these plants that If you look at our listing, they're not there, but the plants were there, so that's,
Managing from there.
so I think this gentleman has a goal for 2 feet, 2 to 3. Maybe some other people have some differing opinions, but I don't think 2 feet is practical. I made that clear. But I think we can certainly continue to take steps to meet some of their goals.
Right.
And that was another reason why I wanted to have you on board to give additional recommendations on how we can help meet those goals.
So there is some options if we wanted to transplant some of the taller species out and bring some shorter ones in. Perhaps we want to investigate more into viewing corridors and create more open areas, targeting areas where the runoff is coming through the park. Our goal in our department is trying to change that mentality of that mowed grass to the shoreline and going back more towards the natural buffer system. Because right now we are really struggling with habitat, water quality, and other issues on our system. I'm not sure if you're aware of the dead zone out in Green Bay, of completely biological dead zone, but that's something that if we don't start to work to prevent, it's going to come up into our system. We've already seen the blue-green algae coming in. You know, there's a lot of runoff. There's a ban on phosphorus. You know, we've made steps, but we haven't made enough. And between ag, between the city, not dumping your lawn clippings out in the ditches, or not putting your leaves in the roadway to flush down into our storm sewers. You know, all these things that we can add together will all help. Now, I'm hoping that we can come to some kind of agreement, and I'll continue to work with Justin on trying to brainstorm ideas for how we can get this to work. For new buffers, absolutely. We can take a look, try and pick better species that will be less in height. A lot of times we like to work with, on our jobs, we work with plant plugs because it doesn't bring in those additional species and those weeds, but it's very costly. So that becomes an issue. But it's definitely, as Justin can verify, a work in progress. You know, I'd love to see more of the park go in. There's so much we can do out there. It's an excellent demo site. And targeting, maybe better targeting, adding viewing corridors. You know, instead of doing a 200-foot plot, maybe you do 50 feet here, 50 feet here, and target those areas where the drainage is coming through the park, so you're getting your biggest filtering capacity. And as he's doing this, he can transplant a lot of these seeds and save a lot of money. So there's definitely a lot we can do. Trying to think if there's anything else that I needed to touch upon. Does anybody have any questions for me right now?
I don't think so. We're pretty, we want the 2 to 3 foot, and you're saying that's gonna be kinda hard to do, right?
I think it's hard to take that existing system that you have. There's not a lot of species. The reason why you want to go with the native plants as opposed to some of the others is because of the deep root structure. It adds for infiltration. It adds for shoreline protection, holding the bank in place. I have done small plantings of 3 to feet, but like nodding pink onion, there's some species that work in that. Black-eyed Susans, I think, or like in that 1 to 3. But to take an existing established buffer, you know, those plants are probably a majority 3 feet, 3 to 4. I think they've been competing a little bit with the bigger species, so.
Yeah, the Menard is pretty tall this year, and so and there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
As you cited. We have what you mentioned, the nodding pink onion, the black-eyed Susan, butterfly weed. There are a number of shorter species. Again, there are some of the really tall ones mixed in as well.
So I don't know, to get it under 3, you'd almost have to remove all those. But I don't know another way to manage that, or create these.
You're
viewing-
more or less saying it can't be done.
I'm not saying it can't be done, but I'm saying it's going to take a
From
lot
the
of
way
time.
it's, with the way it is right now, it can't be done without ripping it all out and starting over.
If you want it under 3 and 2 feet, I don't know how you would do that without starting from scratch. I mean, I think it's a healthy buffer, I think it's a wonderful buffer. I think, I have 100% confidence that it is a good buffer. So my recommendation, you know, not anywhere composed of anything other than its benefits, you know, so don't take this as, I think it's a very healthy buffer. But that's something I'm not a part of, or, so if we want recommendations for how to reduce it, I can do that, but all I'm here is to tell you the health of what it is now, and that it could be very challenging to replace all those species with new ones. Could be very difficult. So
You know,
it could be a over time thing, too.
I think the key thing is just keeping the site as clean as possible, of, as you've mentioned, the thistles, the bad weeds, those types of things. And as it continues to thicken and get better, those other plants will probably get 3 feet tall or 4 feet tall. But again, it doesn't really block anybody's view. I've never gotten any calls from citizens concerned. The only concern they have is about how messy it looks, and it's an education piece too of what prairie. I mean, I work for the county parks, and you go to Coghlan Center and take the nature trail. It's as tall as 10 feet in spots, you know. So it's a matter of what,
No, we did get the,
you know.
with the height.
Yeah, the height is an
And we
issue,
said-
but I think it also is just, you know, making sure that it's maintained and clean, just like the parks are.
That's what we said, and they were gonna maintain it, and they did, they went in there and maintained it.
They do that, I think that's the key thing.
Yeah.
And I think if it does come down to it, instead of reducing the height, putting in some view corridors would be an option.
That's not something that I've ever brought forward, so I don't know if, do you guys know what she's talking about when she says that? Do you want her to explain that?
Where you can see through it or what?
Just, I don't know, you want to just take it? 10
Well, I mean, it
seconds?
could be even areas that they mow. Areas down the pathway, it could be 30 feet and 100 feet, that people can see. It kind of opens what we call our viewing corridors, that they can see through to the water, but you still get the benefits of the buffer, of 70% being buffered, and then 30% allowing them to see the water and see, in access, a viewing corridor for them. So if it came down to, as opposed to taking all the plants out, where he's got that path, maybe he wants to transplant some of those plants out there to a new site and create a wider area that people could see. So as down the future, if we're looking at doing more of these, we come up with smaller sections, but with areas in between that allow for a view, basically. So.
Okay. Anybody else? Jim?
I mean, I thought, you know, when we originally approved this, you know, we stipulated the height. You know, that was a stipulation. And when we had a discussion last week, I thought we were gonna get today was a plan, talk about a plan about the existing bed in the north end of Miller's Bay and how to reduce the height of that. I mean, that's what I thought that's what we're gonna get tonight, you know. And I don't see a plan of how to reduce that below the 2 to 3 feet mark. I'm not hearing that anywhere. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think there's a good chance this would have never been approved if we would have known. I mean, I live 2 blocks from there. I go by there every day, pretty much. I mean, the average height of those plants are 4 to 5 feet with some 6 feet. I'm not saying there aren't a few littler ones mixing, because the growth, they're trying to compete. But when you look at the bed, it's 4 to 5 feet high and with a few 6-footers in there. And there's some little ones down in there, you know, but when you look at the height of the of what it is, it's 4 to 5 feet, that's what it is. I go by there every day. And that, to me, that's unacceptable. You know, that's not what we signed up for originally. That wasn't part of the plan. I mean, we've had discussion here last fall, we had some discussion last week, and we're not getting what we thought we were gonna get. That's the bottom line.
Anybody else?
Is that a question in that, or?
Yeah, you can
Because,
answer.
I mean, if you go back and watch that video, you didn't vote on a 2-foot cap. I know you were very adamant that you think it should be 2 foot or gone, but that's not what the board voted on. There were people who said it's really good right now. They'd like to see the cut plants removed and work towards getting rid of the height. Now, you have certainly a strong opinion, but it's not what the board voted on. The board, I put it up there, specifically the guidance that you gave, and we met with city staff and did exactly what your formal guidance was. We took steps to remove the tallest plants and are going to continue to do that in cooperation with the city.
Justin, I'm going back to the original, when we approved to have the site. That's what I'm going back to. And that's what the Parks Board at the time, that's what it was. And if somehow there's some miscommunication, you know, I'm going back to the original, what was approved when we approved the site. You know, and I guess all of a sudden the height is just growing. It's just like, it's just all of a sudden it was 1 or 2 feet, now, well, maybe now 3. I go by there, they're 4 to 5 feet, you know, on the average. It's not what we signed up for originally when we did the original approval of that site.
I think we did have it down, it's actually in the minutes
It is in the minutes.
that we approved.
If you want to go back and look at them back from the original approval, they're in there.
I'm talking about your guidance from
The
last year.
last one, right. And we said, then we kind of went in, and you said, keep it 2 to 3 and go in there and get rid of the tall ones and that, and which you did. But in my mind, if you don't keep doing that, I'm not for this at all. If they can keep it around 3 foot, I mean, I'm not going there with a ruler or anything else and measuring it, but once it gets up to 5, 6 foot, that, I can't agree with it either. I would never agree with it either. I'm just saying that we have to have some assurances that it's gonna keep up, that you're getting rid of these, how should I say, the 5, 6 footers.
Right. And I think if you gauge your tone of conversation from last meeting, the outrage, if you will, was 8 to 10 feet. And now the conversation is 5 to 6. And hopefully, next year, after our thinning out in June, Jim will be concerned about the 4 to 5, and we can continue to make progress. Getting the bed below 3 feet is not something that I said is that we can certainly do that. I think we can continue to take steps. Every time that we're taking out the tall ones, we're putting in low species, and continue to make progress on that. And I think I do that, or our committee does that in recognition that no indicators of success anywhere is height. I understand there's a genuine interest of some neighbors, and so we put aside the goals of what restoration is, the science behind it, all of that, to try and accommodate these requests, despite them not being indicators of success. But it doesn't happen in one day, right? And there's a thin period of time for transplanting these plants, right? We can go and we can cut, which we did. We went back in late June and cut some of the taller ones. But for actually removing and not having them go to waste, you have early May. And we did some pretty solid work that I suspect Ray or Bill can vouch for the extent of work that involves. And I think that speaks volume to what our group is doing to try and accommodate requests from the Parks Board, despite them not being consistent with standard shoreline practices. What we have there is a very successful, healthy bed, yet we're still taking time to dig up these plants to meet your requests. And we've done that. I mean, the cut plants are largely removed, and that was the goal for this year. And you mentioned 5 to 6, that, in my little presentation, is what we hope to do next spring. We want to remove all of the rosin weed and those tall cone flowers, which, if Jim goes by every day, he'll attest that he didn't see those the previous year. Those ones on the northern edge of it, those are newer this year, and we hope to get rid of those as well.
Okay, now, the part that really bothers me is that we went for this 2 to 3 foot, and like I said, I'm not going out there to measure anything. But when the expert says, there's no way we can do that without ripping the whole thing out. Correct? You said there's no way you could keep it
Well, he
at
said
about
5
3
feet.
foot. There's no way you could keep it at 3 foot.
Yeah,
what she said.
again, I concur. Getting it below at a 2 foot area, even to consistently just to put to 2 to 3 foot is very difficult. All of the plants, or most of the plants that you have they're standard. A black-eyed Susan can get above 3 feet. A purple coneflower, which half of you probably have in your yard, is a really good, beneficial, nice plant to have there. And the flower of that can exceed the 3 foot mark. What we're trying to do is be reasonable, not unreasonable. So we have a bed. You are concerned about height. What we're trying to do is address the tallest each year as time permits, to continue to move it towards a lower mark. I like the possibility, although we're not going to do it without a request for it because it's a lot of work, but creating corridors is something possible. At some point, you may ask, other than it was in the initial plan, why do we care about height? Because it's not an indicator of success at all. We're concerned about it because there's 3 or 4 families who, for whatever better or worse, they view that they have a right to that view. And so maybe it is creating some viewing corridors. I don't know, but I think we're making significant progress and being very reasonable about it.
Okay, so what would your, to cut this short, what would be your goal for this right now, knowing the, how should I say, how we feel about it? What would your goal be? Would your goal be to keep it at 4 foot, go in every year? You tell us what you plan on doing, or if you're just gonna let it go to 6, 7 foot, or in fall, you're gonna cut those down and try to keep it at 4, 5, and then next year, we're gonna try to keep it at 3 to 4, or what is your goal to do this?
Given the current makeup of the Parks Advisory Board, and the interest that they have, our goal will be to continue to reduce the height of these plants, right? There are a select few people here, out of all of the people who have been involved in the process, that have said that height is a major concern. And so we put together a 5-year plan on it, and that was turned down. We weren't asked to do another 5-year plan. What we were asked to do is, over 3 years, continue to work with city staff to identify the tallest species and get them down. And we're doing that. We did that this last year. You've seen it. I mean, you have the pictures of us removing them all. We're going to do that again next year and the next year. We'll probably do it again the next year and the next year and the next year, and continue to move towards a lower plant, consistent with the recommendations that you guys provide.
So you're gonna try to keep it getting down every year?
I'll come back
Trim
next
it
year
out?
in July, and I'll show you the photos of all of the new species that we've removed, and
Oh,
you're
I
gonna...
just want you to tell me that's what you're gonna try to do.
Absolutely.
Is cut the height down.
Yes, and that's what
Right.
we've been doing.
I know it, and I'm not saying you didn't. It wasn't enough, but that's fine. You did that much, you did a lot of work. I'm not saying you didn't do a lot of work, but people don't like the high plants, and I'm one of them.
People love them, too. I mean...
Yeah, and I'm one of them. I mean, it looked like a mess to me.
It's,
But I just want it on record. I can't read what you wrote, but anyway, that's what it's on record, that you're gonna try to do this every year and get it down and get it down and get it down. I mean, you're not gonna please all of us, let's face it. You're not gonna please Jim, not gonna please me. If Gogo was here, he'd be standing up yelling. Thing is, we want to see some progress on this. I mean, we're willing to work with you, but we don't want to go out there and see 8, 10 footers anymore like we used, like we did.
Terry, I mean, I'm not gonna, like I said, it's your plan, and I'm not gonna tell you how to write your plan or what you're gonna do. I guess my hope was that you might say something, well, you know, like, hopefully it was like over a 3-year period, for example, that maybe you'd say 1/3 of the bed we're gonna tackle, and we're gonna get that down to 3 feet or less. And then maybe the next year we'd do the next third, and the next third, and like over 3 years, you know, at the end of 3 years, we're at the 3-foot or below mark. I mean, that's what I was hoping, you know, something to that effect, you know. I'm not gonna tell you how to write your plan, but I was hoping it would be something where it'd be kind of like measurable things that we could see, and because, I mean, that was one of the big things when we had our discussion last fall, is we wanted to, you know, we wanted to see a plan of something that was gonna restrict the height.
Well, we got it down now.
I was going to say, I think it sounds like they have put a lot of work into it and have, what I'm understanding is tackling the largest 8 to 10 feet this go-around and taking care of those. And then next year, it's looking at the 5 to 6 foot. It sounds like to do one little section and cut it all down at once, however the seeds come off or whatever, it just sounds like that's not how they can tackle it. And
Well-
I'm happy with the progress they've made. I'm just making that statement as far as I'm concerned.
I think the issue with this is that we know if we can't contain this, we will have a hard time expanding this project. I think everyone wants to see this succeed. I truly do. I think we all probably can say there's some benefit that we've seen here to water quality and habitats and whatnot. But if we can't get this to a level where we can make the neighbors and all the other groups happy, we're going to face more and more issues with this as we go down the line with expanding it. And I think really in the back of our minds, that's why this particular piece has become the issue that it has. Because we know we can't expand it if we can't get this under control.
And you are never going to make everybody happy.
Right.
Everybody has different views of what looks good and what, you know, I'm here as far as the quality of our system and looking at that. With new plots, absolutely, we can, you know, work with Justin to try and pick different species. He's, in this new one he's doing, he's going with more of a clumping technique, which may be more appealing visually, which we've done both on private. Some people like the mix where it's more of a prairie planting, and some people like it where it's clumped and you have big groups of plants. Some people like it tall, some people like it short. You know, I mean, there's so many different varieties of what people will be happy with. But overall, for me personally, I'm looking at the quality of our system and the benefits you get out of these buffers. So hopefully, between continuing to work together, that we can come up with something that works for everybody. So we're here for anything you need. We'll continue to work with Justin on trying to come up with a final product that will work for everyone. Not that everybody will be extremely ecstatic about, but that can work for everyone. So.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Otherwise, I'm going to read Mr. Miller's opinion of the whole thing. From Bill Miller, Vice Chairman of the Parks Advisory Board. Menominee Park Shoreline Restorations, I apologize for my absence at this meeting, as I am at a community fundraiser, could not attend. I ask these comments be read into the meeting of July 13th, 2015. I take great offense to Mr. Mitchell's comments on his 2015 update report to the Sustainability Advisory Board, the Oshkosh Parks Department, Oshkosh Advisory Parks Board, and Oshkosh Common Council. He states that the majority of the board members had very little knowledge of native plants, shoreline management, best practices, and natural prairie plantings, while he himself pointed out in the meetings that he was not an expert and would defer to them, the experts. While Mr. Mitchell is great at using generic terms and nameless individuals promoting his goal, he needs to remember that this board must take into account everyone in the community's input and concerns. not just his. The board gave Mr. Mitchell very specific guidelines on how to proceed and succeed with this program. It is a shame he viewed them in words. The Parks Advisory Board recommended against the plan while providing height as the key denominator. Although the board could not support in whole his first draft, we modified the plan to include all of the citizens' concerns, as well as providing opportunities for further shoreline restoration. This board takes sustainability very seriously, with everyone in mind, not just his goals. I would recommend to this board that they encourage Mr. Mitchell to work with the Parks Department and this board to stop pitting groups and city boards and commissions against each other. Mr. Mitchell needs to be reminded that the Menominee Park is a true jewel and needs to be managed for the entire community and its neighbors. Anybody else got anything? Okay, thank you. Director's report.
What I wanted to do is give you a quick update on the Riverwalk segments that are being currently worked on and in design phases right now. If you haven't been down to the, it's called the Boatworks area, or the old Boatworks, which is down by the Michigan Street Fishing Pier, that portion is currently being worked on and is close to being finalized. That includes the pedestrian bridge going from the Boatworks property over to the Geldwin property. New restroom facility is probably 90% complete. There's some punch list items, and we're not planning to open that until the parking lot is the next phase of the project that'll be going in down there. There's going to be a public parking lot. So the parking lot is on schedule, or on the next construction area. The bridge and the pedestrian walkway are completed. It's a very nice facility. We got to tour that and take a look at some of the improvements that were made. So that'll be opening up, I suspect, later this fall. And my understanding from the planning staff is that there would be some kind of grand opening once that that section is completed. We're currently...
Can I ask you a question
Yep.
about that? One of the original concept plans, when we saw that original concept of that whole park and all that, or that area, that trail area and stuff, are they still planning on trying to move that one bridge end, the original bridge end that went across the Fox River? Are they trying to plan where one will be on one end? The original concept showed one on one end, one on the other, and they were a little concerned about some of the overhead lines, which are up there quite a ways. Are they planning on trying to move that into place before they're done?
There's actually one, it'd be on the east side of the pedestrian
One's in
bridge.
place, it
It's in
looks like
place
today, yep.
And the other one, I believe, Mr. Davis and his staff are looking at possibly on the other section by the Geldwin. So when you walk off the bridge, you'll see the old portal, and then as you walk onto the next section, you'd see the other end portal.
They're trying to use it down there.
Correct.
Rather than, kind of the original concept plan showed, I think, one on each side of these.
Of the pedestrian bridge?
The part they're working on right now.
Yeah, they couldn't engineer it based on the...
Curvature coming down
Yep,
probably or
exactly.
something? Okay.
So,
All right.
but
I was
they
just
are,
wondering about that.
they're hoping to use the other portal somewhere along the Riverwalk.
Good, thanks.
The next section that we're currently, I believe is going out to bids if it hasn't, is the section going from Oregon Street east towards the dockside. Just a small section in there. So that's out for bids. I would expect work on that once it gets through the council approvals. My guess is that will be starting in the next month and a half or so. And the other section we're currently working on is the section from Oregon Street to the west, back towards the Geldwin and Boatworks site. I believe what they're looking to do is wait and see what kind of bids come in for the eastern portion to see how much on the western side that they can get completed, is my understanding. So hopefully, my guess would be by the end of 2016, both of those sections may be completed so that we'll be able to go to the dockside area. And I know there's still ongoing conversations with Mr. Lindeman and Dockside and the marina and trying to figure out how to get around that section. So things are moving forward. The other item that I wanted to bring up was, if you recall, we had the Steiger Park pathway, essentially from the senior center to the Wisconsin Street Bridge, is in our CIP for reconstruction this year. What we are doing is trying to bid that with reconstruction of the senior center parking lot that we're currently working on. We are running into some I won't say roadblocks, but there's a couple of different alternatives we're looking at the paving for the senior center parking lot. That may get delayed, but what we're trying to do is bid out the asphalt work for the trail at the same time to get some decent bids on that. I'll know a little bit more hopefully in the next week or two and maybe have an update for you at the August meeting. But that's why that's kind of been pushed back a little bit. Back to the Riverwalk, we have been working with planning staff, Landmarks Commission, and the museum staff to install historic signs along the Riverwalk. The Landmarks Commission and the Riverwalk study from years ago had identified various segments of the Riverwalk where historic signs should go. We just installed one recently behind the Leach Amphitheater that deals with the old railroad bridge. If you recall, a couple years back, we put one in Riverside Park. We just toured last week with planning staff, and we identified by the Michigan Street Bridge, there's going to be a historic sign talking about fishing, I believe, is the location for that one? Fishing. Yep, so when you walk up to the Michigan Street Fishing Pier, there'll be a historic sign there. There's one that'll be across the river on the Marion Road section by the new apartment and senior living. There'll be another one installed there. And then we also have one that's going to be installed between Beckett's and the hotel, all dealing with all different aspects of the historic river. And they also are working on a few other ones for different sites along the river. So pretty neat project. And as you're going along, if you see these signs, it's really some old pictures in there and some pretty neat stories. So other than that, we're in budget season. We'll be working on budget now until first couple weeks of August, as well as all of our performance evaluations are due by August 10th. So in addition to everything going on for the summer, we've got a lot of internal paperwork and other things going on. So unless anybody has questions.
Okay. Chad? Sorry.
Just to highlight a couple of the projects that I've been working on throughout the course of the year that have completed. If you've been up to Tech Miller Park with all the concrete paths that have been done, our staff completed the complete restoration up there with all the, the seating, dirt work and seating. It turned out very nice. If you get a chance, take a stroll through that. It worked out well. The same with West Algoma. That is now restored completely, seated, and going forward, the amusement area, we put in a slab and kayak racks for the canoes and kayaks down there, plus did all the track installation earlier this spring that we finally came back and did all the dirt work for and restored. Definitely hope that takes off well because it did improve the area and the function. Major projects-wise, the Stevens Park restroom building is coming along very nice. Starting to work the site restoration around there here within the next week. I know with the electronic strikes and the door hardware is supposed to be installed soon, but things are moving along real well with that project. I think it'll be a nice addition to that park and the uses down there. Ray already spoke of the Boatworks project going forward with the restroom there, where today we did do a walkthrough to develop the punch list for that. Again, another facility turned out very nice. Hopefully be easier for us to maintain well when it opens up. And then the South Park restroom shelter project, the professional service agreement's out for that, so we can start the design phase for that restroom shelter building, where demolition is beginning to take place in September. Currently have gone through the asbestos abatement certification, and we're good to move forward in that area. Programs-wise, things have been busy, definitely with athletic fields here through May, June, and July. We're ending some of the youth programs starting next week already, so it'll give us some time to get back out on facilities to work on those to hopefully build them up towards next year. From that end, the mowing has slowed down, so we're able to get onto some other projects. So that's very good, too, from our standpoint. Facilities-wise, the pool is doing well mechanically and operationally. Just wish it'd be a little bit warmer for that numbers to come up, where Jenny will share more of the numbers end. And the leach is kind of in our busiest time right now with June and July with the multiple events. So we're down there daily cleaning and taking care of that facility and trying to keep that up. And I do want to spend all the improvements that happened down there throughout the landscape and in the mulching that took place over the course of the year with Bill's crew and stuff. It really turned out very nice down there, and I think we had some very nice comments of the facility this year. Our next step is to hopefully take into some painting of some doors and trim work down there to help boost the aesthetics of that facility as well. So Very busy summer, tough, challenging with staffing. We've had a few people leave throughout the course of the summer, which fills holes, plus vacation times and all that stuff too. So it's been an eventful year, and hopefully we'll keep rolling with it through the rest of the season here. So that's what I have. If you have any other questions.
Thank you. Bill?
We've also been pretty busy in my divisions. A couple of things that we've completed of late. We completed the planting at the George Washington Memorial. The site is essentially done, except we're waiting on a couple light fixtures yet there, but all the restoration is complete and the plantings have been done. Another area that we just finished recently was a new plant bed at the Opera House Square, and there, as you recall, there was a new flagpole and some other amenities added to that area. So we kind of tied it in with the completion of the landscape bed last week. As Chad alluded to, our crew has been doing some work down at the Leach. We actually started this past winter, did a bunch of tree pruning throughout that property, and then also followed up with some replacements of some plant material and also the mulching of the entire site. We also did some other smaller projects. We had done some work at the Pollock Pool and the Convention Center landscape. We still do the maintenance down there, so we kind of upgraded that area a little bit by adding some new mulch and trying to tie it in a little better to the property at the hotel. The crew has also been working on removing some ash that are in the sidewalk program areas. We've had several areas where the trees were almost as large as the terrace in diameter, so consequently a lot of sidewalk lifts and that sort of thing. And given their size and poor structure, we were decided to remove those rather than put them into a treatment program because they were causing infrastructure issues for the sidewalks and curb and gutter and that sort of thing. Shortly, we'll be starting again on our emerald ash borer treatments. We've identified some areas where we would prefer to save the trees, so we're going to work on injecting those. As you recall in past conversations I've had here, we do that on a 3-year cycle, so we're able to do a batch each year and then get through quite a bit of our inventory and at least protect those trees that we care to save. So. Other than that, as Chad mentioned, at the cemetery property, our mowing has slowed down a little bit, which has allowed us to do some other things we haven't had time for. So everything's been running along pretty smoothly out there as well. That's all I have. If you have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Jenny?
Oh, where to start? I think I'll start with the pool. The pool we have 2 new managers up there, so they've been doing very well. They're both, one just graduated from college and one is going to be a senior in college, so they've both been doing a great job for being brand new and relearning, learning everything new. So I spent about 3 weeks with them before the pool opened, kind of training them and going through things day by day, but they've been doing a great job. The pool's actually up from last year, which I was a little surprised about, but again, last year was really cool. 2013 was our best year yet that the pool has been open. So we're a little down from 2013, but up from last year. So we're about 3,200 up in admissions, about 2,600 up in concessions, and about 1,248 visitors up. So these last probably 4 or 5 days have been phenomenal. So we're finally getting that hot weather, and things have certainly been very, very busy throughout the weekend, today, last week. So things are looking up now. But so far we're actually up as of June. So hopefully we're going to have a strong July and see where we end up. But as far as special events go there, we have 6 special events planned this year at the pool. I was able to get Winnebago Community Credit Union to sponsor all those events this year, so they are the major sponsor of all the special events at the pool. So that's been great. We've been able to cover anything for any event through that sponsorship. So we've had the Welcome Summer celebration so far, and in that event, A&W also donated free root beer floats for all the kids. This week coming up, we have the family luau that we're doing on Thursday night, and at the end of the month we have our Ducky Days event. So again, all those are completely sponsored, so it's fun kind of planning and knowing everything's covered for there. So otherwise, staffing has been going well up there, and everything else has been running pretty smoothly. So Out at the park, the rest of the areas, kind of pretty close to last year so far for May and June. Going through the end of June in amusements, we're up about 1,100. Concessions over by amusements, we're up about 963. The lake fly were down about $240, and REITs were down about 144. So we're doing pretty good compared to last year, running through the end of June. As far as events out there, we had a new event this year in June it was called Mascot Day. It was sponsored by Bella Vista Senior Living. We had hundreds and hundreds of people out there. It was a beautiful day. We probably had 10 to 12 different mascots, anywhere from Fang to, the Culver's guy to just all kinds of them. Rasmussen College, Rassy the Moose. The kids loved it. They were all riding the train around the park with them. And we had face painting, and Leon's Frozen Custard actually did free ice cream cones for that day for all the kids. So that one went very well. In June, we had our first Snooze the Zoo on a day that was supposed to rain all day, but we didn't get a drop of rain, so it was perfect. Had a really great time. Again, that event, we get a lot of really positive comments from people, and actually this year a family from Chicago came and just raved all night about how much fun they had and how much they loved it. So it's a great event for families, and that one was also completely 100% sponsored by Bella Vista, and Thrivin' Southwest sponsored that one. So again, all of our events are so weather dependent, so we've been pretty lucky this year so far. The other thing that we've had one so far are movie nights. We have 4 of them this year. Those are sponsored by Rasmussen College, so again, completely covered 100%, so it's free for the community to come in. We played our first movie, Big Hero 6, in June, and we had a good 300, 400, 500 people there. It was very, very, again, nice night, very well attended. We have one up this coming Friday night. We have another movie night. So those are, again, we have the Bones House down there. Rasmussen comes with their mascot. Just kind of fun for the whole family to come out, hang out. So those have been going really well. The last thing is our concert series, like I think Ray mentioned, started last week. It was probably the most people we've ever had in all the years at that night, and also definitely the most revenue we've made on a single night for that concert series. We've had a ton of... We've been really, really trying, like we always do, but trying to promote that event and people to know about it. Last year, still the last night or of the event, people are like, oh, I never knew about this, or I'd come down, So we're trying to do everything we can to really get people to know about that event. But again, we had a beautiful night, and we had a ton of people there. It was great. And we also this year, for the first time, are doing our own food. So we're doing completely our own food. Where in the past years, Glass Nickel has done that for us, but I thought it's something we could handle, certainly, and try to get a little bit more, revenue for the Leach while doing that. So that's been going well also. So between the concert series every Tuesday in July into August, like I said, we have another movie night at the Leach, 2 special events this month at the pool, and we need to really get ready for our upcoming Touch a Truck. So that is on August 8th. Last year, that event drew at least 2,500 people, and that one is sponsored by Oshkosh Corp. So that's our next really big one that I need to get in gear and get going on that one. A lot of calls already, a lot of people who really want to be involved and had a great time last year, but that'll be our next real big one. So I think that's it for now, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Steve?
Very similar to Jenny's report on the pool. We're having a pretty good year at this point. Hopefully the bottom doesn't fall out in the fall, but at this point we're almost $35,000 ahead of last year, which is quite remarkable, I think, for the on-again and off-again spring we had. We're also $22,000 ahead of the last 3-year average, so that speaks well to the overall as far as financial history goes back. Rounds are up 1,420 over 2014 and 528 higher than the 3-year average. So we're pretty pleased about it. It doesn't show up in rounds as much as it does in the revenue side. We bumped a few of the fees this year, which helped. And concessions are also up over $6,000 over 2014. So we're pretty pleased with that. Some small increases in beverages there and our dog concession. Right now, our city tournament push is on. Our goal is to exceed 140 players, which is kind of an average number. We're really shooting for 150 or better. Conditioning, for me, is the top priority. We have to work hard to get the golf course in the best condition, prior to that, and maintain it through that weekend at least, so that all the competitors are happy and content with the outcome. Trace has also marketed and sold most of the tee sign advertising that was available to sell this year. It's a cyclical thing. Every year there's another batch that comes due, and they become available for new or existing customers to rent. There's still several available, and next year there'll be some more as their terms expire. Again, as I said, Chad mentioned the weather. The weather's been good for growing grass, and then we irrigate it. So it never really does slow down a lot. We're just now starting to see a little reduction in mowing on the roughs, but everything else is still, full speed ahead. But otherwise, golf course condition is pretty good, in my estimation. I think we've had some good comments by customers, both from the city and from without. But overall, we're pleased with the situation we're in right now, and hopefully we can carry this on through the fall.
That's it? Anything else? Nobody wants to say nothing. Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.